Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Luke from Astro Awakening. It is Monday, the 18th of August, and this is your Astro report for the week ahead. I've titled this video, Beware the Yod, Beware the Finger of God. Something very unusual is happening this week. We're having a new moon in Virgo, which is going to be the first of two new moons that we're going to get in Virgo. The second of which is going to fall on the 29th degree of Virgo, and that happens to be a partial solar eclipse. So that's right, we're heading towards eclipse season. Bum, bum, bum. But we start this video on a Monday, and the silicon chip inside her head switches to overload. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why. I think that was the best thing that ever came out of Sir Bob Geldof's mouth was that particular song. But the interesting thing about Mondays is Mondays are ruled by the moon, the mood, the emotions. Why do they start the working week to week new on a moon day? Why not start it on Tuesday, the day of Mars, the day of action, the day of motivation, drive, assertion? No, we started on a Monday. And when I say we, I mean the matrix, the system. We start our working week on a moon day. I think that's backwards, if you ask me. So what I do on moon days is I don't see clients on moon days. When I used to have a business, I used to run in the 9 to 5 sort of business realm, and I hated Sundays because of Mondays. I get anxiety about going back to work on the Monday. So when I established my own business, I thought, fuck it. I'm not going to work on Mondays. And I don't. My working week starts on a Tuesday. Well, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. And the reason I've done that is because I want to avoid the moody mood Mondays and feeling like I have to go back to the grindstone. And there's something weird about starting your week on a Tuesday. It doesn't have the same effect. Perhaps because that day is ruled by Mars. Anyway, that's enough about that. Let's get into the astrology. So we begin this week with the moon in Gemini, and we're in the waning phase of this moon. We're in the last quarter phase of a lunar cycle, heading towards a new moon this coming Saturday. So this new moon coming up, which I'll speak more on at the end of this video, is in the sign of Virgo, and that's the first of two new moons we're going to have through Virgo season. So because we're in the waning sort of completion release phase of this last month's lunar cycle, this is a good time to detoxify, to cleanse, and perhaps even fast. If you want to do a 24-hour or up to 72-hour fast, this week is the perfect time to do it, to prepare energetically as the lunar light fades and the vitality comes down to the low point as we go into the new moon across Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this week. So fasting doesn't have to always involve food, by the way. Fasting can be from people, when you just had enough of people and you got to fast. It can be from social media and all forms of media. It can be the vice that you have that you know is not necessarily helpful. And when you eliminate that, you challenge that aspect of your ego that is attached to that particular thing. And it's an easy way to sort of transform that aspect of ego and overcome the self. And in order to do that, you've got to put yourself into a little bit of discomfort. So this is probably the perfect week to do just that. Now, the other thing that's happening and continuing to happen, it's going to happen for probably on and off in some various form for the next 7 years, is the alignment between the outer planets. Uranus is into Gemini, Saturn, Neptune conjunction in Aries, and Pluto into Aquarius puts them into this trine, sextile shape, which means that any planet now entering into any new sign is going to trigger the outer planets, as we'll see as we move through this week and into the new moon, and also recap a little bit of the coming eclipse season as well. Wait till the end of this video. So what we have at the moment with Saturn, Neptune, and also Pluto is they're retrograding, which means they're pulling back. Now, Saturn and Neptune are going to go back into Pisces. Pluto is going to go back to the first degree of Aquarius. And then we have Uranus moving forward in Gemini, but ever so slowly because Uranus is moving towards his retrograde phase. And what's happening is this outer planetary alignment is becoming tighter and tighter and more intense. And this is one of the key alignments that's going to impact the collective consciousness in a pretty profound way. With Uranus and Pluto into air signs, there's a lot of shifting information. There's a lot of things coming to light and things changing rapidly. Notice the story and how quickly the story is shifting out there and the narrative. And then you have this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is relating to this disillusionment with the system, with the ruling class and the authority as it is. And as more information comes to light, we're continuing to be more disillusioned with the status quo, the government, the rules, those in positions of power. No one ever faces real justice. However, there's some pretty heinous crimes that come to light, especially if you look over the last 5 years in relation to the Novid era. Now, that's going to continue to happen. So, how do you navigate this type of upheaval? You've got to loosely attach to reality, to your belief system, to your education, to the narrative, to the story, to the media, even the social media and the conspiracy realm. You've got to not necessarily cling or bind too tight to anything. You've got to learn how to become the observer, learn how to depolarize yourself to find the center point so that you can transcend through the upheaval, through the chaos, perhaps even through with Saturn Neptune, the collapse. Saturn Neptune conjunction actually doesn't happen until February of next year. However, their impact is being felt, and it's this slow disillusionment or disintegration with the system. And all for good reason, because it's corrupted, absolutely rotten to the core. And voting for a new political leader in any one of these forms of current government is absolutely futile. It doesn't change anything. It's like deck chairs on the Titanic. The ship's going down, and it's obvious to see. And it's obvious to see because you look at the people that put and elevated into these positions of power, and they're very weak people. So this is a hallmark of this Saturn Neptune energy, which is disillusionment and just like what the actual fuck is going on. Now, it's a good time to find the inner authority within, your connection to the unified field, to God, to source, as becoming your own source of sovereignty, power, and authority in your life, and put no man, system, government, law, or anything above the connection between yourself and the creator. So moving forward on Tuesday, we have the moon moving into its home sign of Cancer, where it's going to meet up with Jupiter and Venus moving through that particular sign. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and a little bit of Thursday, we're going to have the moon in its home sign of Cancer, and it's going to activate and trigger the Jupiter and Venus alignment that's happening in that sign. Now, this is a beautiful energy to tune into the quality of nurture, nourishment, and care. I like to think that Cancer, being an emotional sign and a cardinal sign in its expression, the outward expression of emotion, I like to think that Cancer is the feeling of love. If love has a feeling, Cancer is that energy. Now, it's different for everyone because we experience and express and give and receive love in different ways. But what is that feeling of love for you? That's Cancer energy. And the quality of Cancer is to give nurture, to give nourishment, to give care, to give kindness. So this is a good time to pay it forward, commit a random act of kindness, do something nice for someone to make them feel the love that you have for them. And this is Tuesday and into Wednesday in particular. Now, this is happening with the sun's biannual trine to Chiron. This can present opportunities for healing. Now, Chiron retrograding in Aries is ruled over by Mars in its sign of debilitation, which is Libra, the sign of relationship. And it's making a beautiful sort of week-long sextile to Mercury as Mercury's come out of its retrograde phase, moving through Leo. So, with the Mercury Mars sextile and Mars having rulership over this Chironic energy in Aries, this is a reminder that words can hurt, but words can also heal. This sextile energy between Mercury and Mars is a good time to remember the Ho'oponopono prayer, which translates to correct the mistake or right the wrong. It's a Hawaiian healing prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And it's used a lot in healing the dynamics in relationship in order to be able to come down into the heart and dissolve a lot of disharmony between yourself energetically and another. The other thing to note about the Ho'oponopono is that it not only can be used in relationships with other people, it can be used in a relationship to yourself. And a beautiful thing to do if you're finding yourself being self-critical or judgment or hard on yourself, and your inner critic is just really hammering you because you didn't do something right or you could have done it something better or life's not great for you, and you keep sort of, you know, beating up on yourself, A key to the Ho'oponopono prayer when utilized for self-healing is to imagine a younger version of yourself. A not more innocent version of you, like an inner child version of yourself. Now, just know that when you're hard on yourself and you're beating yourself up, it's almost like you're turning to that inner part of you, that inner wounded child, and you're reinforcing its hurt. You're saying, yeah, you are shit. You aren't good enough. You should be upset. You should be feeling bad. And we wouldn't do that to any child, let alone one that we loved. And if you love yourself and you're in a child, if you catch yourself beating yourself up, being hard on yourself, this is a time to close your eyes and imagine that younger version of you in its pure innocence and joy. And say to that version of you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. The key to the Ho'oponopono prayer that I've found to work effectively is to repeat that 3 times with sincerity. In other words, you got to put a bit of love into it. You got to put a bit of emotion into it. Hello, Moon in Cancer, the sign of nurture, nourish. How about doing a little bit of self-nourishment, self-nurture? If you are also fasting through this time period, you can do that from a place of hardship or a place of love and compassion. And just know that the part of you that's going to resist that is the hurt, wounded ego part of you. And your job is to nurture yourself through its resistance. Now, make sure to give yourself plenty of love early in the week because as we get into Thursday, the moon is going to enter Leo. And as it does, it'll trigger an opposition to Pluto. And this is a time to be mindful of how we're choosing to respond or react to life's triggers, to things that can set us off. Now, when the moon is opposite Pluto, little tiny things that trigger us can cause volcanic eruptions. And it's not the trigger, it's what's laying much deeper. Now, if there are things that are going on below the surface that you're hiding from or avoiding, the Thursday may bring those energies to the surface a little bit more so than normal. So be careful of how you respond and react. Now, if you are doing a little bit of self-love or even some fasting to sort of really cleanse and detoxify, you might have a real intense purge on Thursday. So welcome that purge. A purge can come from the emotions as a big emotional release. And it might be triggered by something that's irritating, frustrating, causing you to react. The key to that is to allow it to get to the deeper wound that's much, much more below the surface and love yourself through it. This is a perfect time to cleanse, clear, detoxify, and purify yourself, ready for a new beginning. A new beginning that's going to be in the sign of Virgo, the sign of health and well-being. So let's take a look at the new moon in Virgo happening at 0 degrees of Virgo. Now, remember earlier I said when any planet enters into the first degrees of any sign, it's going to trigger an alignment to all of the outer planets because they're all at the early degrees of new signs. Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini, Saturn, Neptune at 0 and 1 degrees of Aries, and Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. So this new moon is going to square Uranus. It's going to quincunx to Saturn and Neptune. It's also going to create another quincunx to Pluto. And because Pluto and Saturn and Neptune are sextiling each other, we have a yod appearing, which is when there is 2 planets quincunxing a third, and those 2 planets are sextiling each other. It creates what's called the finger of God. The finger of God is like that your soul has signed up to do some sort of evolutionary work at a deep level, and the yod is the realization that there is no fucking bypassing this. Now, this new moon at 0 degrees of Virgo is also going to trigger the fixed star Regulus. And Regulus represents those in positions of power, authority, celebrity. And it's also strongly connected to the downfall of people in positions of power when they have misuse that power and become too egotistical in its expression. So we have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is the disillusionment of boundaries, of authority, of rules, of structures, of systems, of governance. And we also have Pluto into Aquarius, which is bringing into our consciousness a lot of the hidden things that are much deeper that have been kept from us. Now, those two in sextile to each other, but also quincunxing the new moon, which is triggering the fixed star Regulus, We may just see some people in high positions of power and authority come to their demise. Now, that's the optimist in me looking at what's going on with this alignment. The realist in me says, yes, but we're operating within a very corrupt system. So we might get the news and information of those in high positions, power, authority, and even royal situations. Regulus is known as a royal star. So think of like, the aristocratic type people. And we might have information that's coming to light that creates a lot of like uncertainty and a little overwhelm. And it can also further break down our belief in the system. Now, will justice be served? That's a matter for another time. We just might see some people in high positions, power, authority that fall from grace. And it won't be because, that they've just run into some misfortunate event. It'll be because of their own actions and doing. It's like a karmic retribution. Now, on a personal level, we're looking at Virgo, the sign of health, well-being, refinement, and routine, how we spend our time and energy. This is about bringing laser focus to yourself, to your life, to your routine, to your work, to your health. This is an optimal new moon to look at some of your dysfunctional habits and behaviors that hold you back, that need to be resolved, refined, removed, purified, and purged. Sometimes that realization can come about because of health issues. It's almost like we've neglected our health or we haven't been paying attention to it, and we've just gotten a little bit lazy with ourselves. And then over time, our health suffers until we get some sort of health breakthrough or breakdown, and we bring into our realization just how important it is to maintain good health. Now, how do we do that through Virgo? It's pay attention to the detail. It's the little things. It's the finer things. It's the things that you think don't really matter that actually do. A lot of us are looking for the big quick fix. We want get the ripped body in 30 days, or we want the amazing diet or with the Ozempic where we can just take a pill or a drug and all of a sudden we don't have to do it. That's the lazy way out. Perfect health, perfection, Virgo, it comes about through attention to detail. It's the little things done consistently over time that bring the best result. So, where do you need to in your life focus on the little things? Make some small adjustments, cut out some bad behaviors. Look at your health and well-being. And when I think about health, I don't just think of your physical health, although Virgo is a lot connected to your physical health and well-being. We want to look at the four pillars of health, which are physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual health. And this might be looking at a bit of a spiritual detox. Or maybe you can take some of your spiritual ideas and practices which you know work and are helpful, but haven't been necessarily doing. And this isn't about sitting in meditation for hours on end every day. This is about 10 to 15 minutes every day, consistently, rain, hail, or shine. It's the accumulative effect over time that brings the reward for the effort. So it's pay attention to the little things, take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. The Virgo new moon at the pinnacle point of this finger of God leads us towards the full moon, which will be a lunar eclipse. So the full moon in Pisces coming up is going to be a lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now on Saturday, when we have the Virgo new moon, we also have the Venus square to Chiron. And this brings challenge or tension directly into our relationships where we have that inner wound being triggered. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. Obviously, we want to check your own birth chart for activation of critical degrees, 26 degrees of the cardinal signs in particular. But this is another reinforcement of the need to heal our relationships. And all forms of outer relationships are an expression or a reflection of the relationship we have to ourselves. So this week leading into the first of two Virgo new moons and also right into eclipse season is all about preparation for what's ahead. This is a good time to cleanse, detoxify, purify, and ask yourself, how is your relationship to yourself and your health? Where have you been neglecting the little things? Where have you been brushing them to aside? Where have you been complacent or even lazy when it comes to your overall health and well-being? And remember, it's not just your physical health, it's your mental health, your emotional health, and even your spiritual health. This Virgo new moon is going to see us through to the Pisces full moon, which is a lunar eclipse. This is a deep realization that optimal health is forged in your day-to-day habits and routines. It's the little things done consistently over time that lead to good health overall. So, where do you need to make some small Virgoan adjustments? Where do you need to refine your routine? Now, also don't forget that Virgo is the sign of service. How can I be of help or use to others? Well, if you're not in optimal health, you're no good to anyone. So from time to time, we need a little bit of higher self intervention. Enter the finger of God to point directly at the very thing that you need to modify, change, or improve. And the key is, have you got the awareness and the courage to do something about it? So I hope you've enjoyed this week's update. If you have, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell because I was going to title this video Fall of the King, being that the new moon is on the fixed star Regulus, the royal star. However, I'm going to use that title in an upcoming video when it's all about the breakdown of the royal family and what I see as the demise or the fall of Charles and the rise of William, Prince William into King William, the final king of the monarch. So make sure you've hit that bell so you get notified when that video drops. And I'll see you real soon. Peace out.